Thank you very much, Prof. It's a very interesting topic, and I think you have done a good job in explaining the current problem that's facing our country, basically. It's about this Salafism and kind of a marriage of convenience between the government and the Salafi ideologues. And with that, I would like to invite our second speaker, Dr. Amran from ISSI to present. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi washabihi ajmain. Dear Dato, Dr. Farouk Musa, Professor Jeff Kenney, Professor Farid Alatas, whom I met long time ago, now met him today, friends of IRF and all the participants. So I'm going to give my thought on this issue, but before that I just would like to comment Prof. Kenney assessment on this Salafism thing. The Salafism, if we look into this, basically the 20th century phenomena. I think the idea of reverting to Ibn Taymiyyah and later on Ahmad ibn Hanbal is kind of back projection. Yeah? So if we look the history starting from 20th century, maybe the part is around 1918, then the picture will be clear. And as far as Malaysia is concerned, Salafism is maybe starting very recent, it's 70s. So in this region, I don't think, although we know this is flowering, we not become a major kind of system of thought or belief system in this part of the region. And in fact, in the Muslim world, if we look, maybe 80% or 90% are non-Salafi. They are either Ash'ari or Maturidi. So we should be more clear about the history of Salafism, I think, if we want to look into its impact. Going back to Dato Farouk comment on Ash'ari, I think three things he mentioned. I think first about this occasionalism. I think this issue of occasionalism, if we look into problem induction by Hume, he already made it clear for us. There's no kind of causal necessity. There's a causal relation, but not causal necessity. And if people who read science, they know now by the modern physics, the quantum physics, we are no longer live in the Laplacian or Newtonian mechanistic or deterministic world. We are living in very indeterministic and probabilistic world, which is kind of near to what Ash'ari is talking about. Yeah? So I think the problem of occasionalism, we must look into the problem of induction, and the way that science operating now is a very probabilistic. So I think it's not, we cannot just say occasionalism kind of, we don't believe in causal relation. It doesn't mean we didn't drink medicine, or we didn't take medicine, or we will stand in front of in front of the road to be hit by the car. Maybe God will help us. It's not the thing. And the second issue that Dr. Farouk mentioned about faith without evidence or verification, I think it's not true. In Ash'ari especially, we are very clear that iman or faith must be based on dalil or burhan, we call, or tahqiq. That's why we said, for example, in Ash'ari, in matter of faith, you must have dalil or burhan, we call tahqiq. In matter of action or amal, we can do taqlid. So there is no taqlid in faith, but there's taqlid in action. So to simply say there is no verification in Ash'ari kind of belief is, I think, is not quite true. And the last thing I think about hadith, one of the major attack by the muhaddis to us is because we do ta'wil, we do interpretation. We don't take things literally. The major attack by the Hanabila and later on the muhaddis or now Salafi to Ash'ari because we practice ta'wil. Yeah? That means rational analogy, allegorical thinking, kind of we call, it's not literal. So I think this thing is among the things I want to comment, but I just to want to say something this afternoon. Today we are talking about two things. First about Ash'ariyah, yeah, which the Farouk mentioned, obviously about the problem of al-Ghazali, and the second thing is about Salafi. I think if time permit me, I will talk first about this Ash'ariyah thing. What I think, just now I talked with Prof. Farid, yeah? I talked about post-colonial epistemology. He mentioned we should talk about more decolonial rather than post-colonial. So I think he gave me a good point this afternoon, that we should talk about decolonial epistemology rather than post-colonial epistemology. So we should learn something from history and philosophy of science by this Pierre Duhem. Yeah? He's a French physicist, mathematician, historian, and philosopher of science. He worked very much or contributed in thermodynamics, hydrodynamics, and elasticity. His main theory here is a Duhem theory of continuity, Duhem continuity theory and history of science. The idea is this: in the medieval Western history, there is a kind of issue about this medieval Europe Dark Ages. Yeah. So people always think there is suddenly appear scientific revolution. In the 17th century, 16th century, Copernicus come out of blue, Galilei, Kepler, and Newton. And they start with Plato or Neoplatonism. So a kind of 1,000 gap. So they call medieval European Dark Ages. There's no activity. There's no scientific, there's no rational thinking. So what they said in these Dark Ages of Europe, Western medieval Europe, anti-rationalism, anti-intellectualism, scripturalism, scholasticism, stagnation, they call fanaticism, barbarism, and all kind of bad thing about that situation. This is a kind of standard view of history of science in the 20th century. Yeah? But Duhem disagree with this. Yeah? What Duhem finds is that he encountered the work of medieval mathematicians and philosophers such as John Buridan, Nicole Orson, and Roger Bacon, whose sophistication surprised him. He consequently came to regard them as the founders of modern science, having in this view anticipated many of discoveries by Galileo Galilei and later thinker. So Duhem concluded that the mechanics and the physics of which modern times are justifiably proud to proceed by an uninterrupted series of scarcely perceptible improvement from doctrine professed in the heart of the medieval school. So he kind of resurrect or bring the medieval Dark Ages into the proper light. So who promote this idea of medieval, European medieval ages? Yeah? There are a group of people. First, Renaissance man is Enlightenment man. For example, Voltaire, Condorcet, yeah? Because the Enlightened men don't like the church, the religious establishment. Yeah? So they said Dark Ages. And also, people like William Draper and Andrew White promote the idea of conflict of thesis between religion and science. So they've been kind of propagated in the Europe. Yeah? And also among the medievalist scholars themselves. Yeah? If you look, for example, a book by Norman Cantor, Inventing the Middle Ages, he said how the scholar during this time, 20th century, tried to create this. That's what they call inventing the Middle Ages. Yeah? The idea of Middle Ages have been invented. It's not what thing to be. And also in the quite recent book, Genesis was signed by James Hannam, he put how basically the role of the theologian in the development of modern science. So by that way, we see the idea of medieval ages is really artificial, a very invented entity. This is the book which is promoted by Draper and White, History of Conflict Between Religion and Science, 1874, and History of Warfare of Science with Theology in Christendom in 1896. Yeah? So this is the history from the Western medieval Europe. When they say the medieval ages are very, 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 there is nothing there to be proud of, to be taught about rationality or thinking. But now, when we look into the proper history now, by now this now become a received view in the Western history of science. By now, every people accept the role of the so-called medieval ages. Because there is a period, what we call the Latin translation movement, during the 1100, 1200, by people like Geber Aurelius, who become Pope later on, Pope Sylvester II, Gerard of Cremona, and Adela of Bath. This is a key figure in translation movement. Then also there is the foundation of universities during this time, like Bologna, Paris, Oxford, Cambridge, and Padua. This is in the Middle Age, in Dark Ages, universities are being formed. So how can you say there is a Middle Ages, whereas the universities are being formed during this time? And they now find all sorts of scholars involved there. Yeah? People that do him found is like John Buridan, Michael Orison, and Roger Bacon. But later on we find like William of Ockham, Don Scotus. These people are theologians. But they are the one who spearheaded the idea of science in Europe before being received by Copernicus, Galilei, Kepler, and Newton. This is the lesson that we can see. We can retrieve something from the medieval Western history of science. So, but how about now the Muslim look at the thing? Yeah, what I call the post-al-Ghazali Islamic Dark Ages. Yeah, this is the idea that has been promoted. Yeah, I call it as the post-al-Ghazali Islamic Dark Ages myth. First, by the Muslim modernists themselves. People like, for example, Muhammad Abduh, Rashid Reda, Iqbal, and Fazlur Rahman in recent time. And they are kind of fan like Charles Adam in Islam and modernism in Egypt, H.R. Jib in modern time Islam. What they view Islam? Yeah, basically they view Islam started from, for example, from the modern time. People like Afghani, Abduh, and Rashid Reda. Then there's a kind of reform by Muhammad Abduh. Then they back project to Ibn Taymiyyah. Then they back project to Ahmad Muhammad. This is a standard view of Islam in the modern Muslim mind, in the modernist Muslim. Yeah. So this very nothing after Ghazali. There's no activity. This is the myth number one. Myth number two, I said by the Orientalists themselves. Yeah. Although by now we already mentioned a lot about Edward Said Orientalism, and now we are talking about decolonial kind of way of doing things. But we call old habit die hard. Yeah, basically we still proceed with the old habit, old mindset. Yeah. So people like Anawati, George Anawati, Louis Goddard, Montgomery Ward, and Van S. Yeah. They depict the picture of the post-al-Ghazali as anti-rationalism, very anti-intellectualism, scripturalism, the same like medieval ages in Europe, scholasticism, stagnation, fanaticism, apologetic, their work, for example, in theology in Kalam as apologetic, defensive, dialectical, argumentum ad hominem, more like character assassination rather than intellectual discussion, moribund, fossilized conservatism, and stagnation of philosophical theory. These are kind of the Middle Ages in the Islamic world by the Orientalists, yeah, by the Orientalists. So after Ghazali, there's no more. We have Ibn Rushd, then no more. But what happened to these people? What they are doing actually? People like Fakhruddin Razi, a very important philosopher in Islamic tradition. People like Tatazani, all these people, Baidawi, yeah, Nasafi, which is one of the earliest book in theology in this world is Nasafi, yeah, Aqaid al-Nasafi. And up to 19th century, we have people like Bajuri. Just before Abduh came, did Abduh notice these people? And also we have people like Tusi, who try to bring back the Abyssinian kind of philosophy. Ibn Rushd, very much loyal to Aristotle. Suhrawardi, who bring the Ishraqi philosophy. And later we have Ibn Arabi, Rumi, Ibn Khaldun, Professor Farid, and expertise on him. Mullah Sadr. So, this is an intellectual work or rational, analytical work. And we also see, and if we try to zoom proper to this paper, basically the key people are basically Ash'arite, philosophical, logical, analytic theology. We are talking about verification, tahqiq. These people are proposing tahqiq. So where is the truth about this myth of post-al-Ghazali Islamic Dark Ages? So this need to be understood. Yeah, we know people like maybe Dato Farouk Frifel, Kadi Abdul Jabbar, Abu Ali Jubai, Hashim Jubai. Yeah, they are not around anymore, but there's a lot more people coming. They are very analytical. You look of Badawi, we have been translated 1,000 pages on this about thing that he works much longer than al-Ghazali on the philosophy. Okay, now we go a little bit to this Salafi thing, yeah? And I said it's a very recent phenomena. It's a 20th century, this is a very remote area. During that time, we had Istanbul. We had Istanbul, yeah? Cairo, these are Baghdad is the cosmopolitan of the Muslim world. Najat are a very remote area. It's a very recent. Then we see, if we look into Salafism narrative, I think this is the way to look into it. First, we must look before the collapse of Ottoman Empire. That's the first period. Because it simultaneously worked with the rise of, they call Najdiyun call first. They didn't call themselves Salafi first. They call Najat, Da'wah and Najat. Yeah, very local activity. Then during the Ottoman Empire, at the end of Ottoman Empire, or during that time, these are very marginal activity. They only can become prominent when Ottoman Empire collapsed. Yeah? And during this time also, the Muslim modernists also responsible to promote them, collaborate with them. The co-option between pan-Islamism like Afghani, Abdul, Rashid Reda, especially Abdul, we can see Afghani and Abdul are more leaning toward more rationalistic. But when we come to Reda, he become literal. He become the supporter of Saudi later on. Yeah? And now the rise of Jamal Abdul Nasir up to the oil crisis, this is where Ikhwan co-op with Wahhabi, and now like Professor Jeff said about the collaboration of Salafism. So I think the timeline is like this. First, the movement of local movement, very local movement, Wahhabi Saudi. They call themselves Ali Tawhid, Muwahidun, Da'wah Najdiyah. Then Reda, I think, is a key figure who promote this, who kind of globalize Salafism. Because the word itself is not used by them at the beginning. Reda, in the sense, kind of give legitimacy to Salafi, to Wahhabi, become a global movement later on. And later on, is Ikhwan, make them more global. Yeah? And now we see what Prof. Jeff is talking just now. So this is a kind of timeline of this Wahhabism, yeah? Salafi Wahhabism. So in the sense, the modernist Muslim, people like Abdul and Reda, is kind of co-op with this Salafi at the beginning. So they kind of very strange, I think, relation. Their birth is more or less maybe they are fathered by the same people, Abdul, yeah? Although they are diversified later on. And we know the Wahhabi style, one day they don't want something, they just depose the people. First they depose Reda, they no longer want to associate with Reda, and later on, like now, they no longer want to associate with Ikhwan, yeah? But they used before, when they need them. So this, I think, about actually the real Muslim world is not much Salafi. I think now if we see people like in our place, is a Shafi'i, yeah? This Hanafi, this area, the Maliki and Hanbalite is very little. Yeah, this is the root of I think Salafi inspiration. But from this big thing, from this four, we have now most of the Shafi'i and Maliki become Ash'ariyah, and Hanafi become Maturidi in terms of the belief, yeah? the faith. So only a small number, not quite many, is Hanabila and Shi'i also, we know, in Iran. But this is now the problem that Prof. Jeff is saying just now, the kind of this, the emergence of Salafism. This is the one that we are facing now. From the minority, but they are vocal minority. Now they spread all over the world, and in Middle East they are very prominent now, except maybe not in Morocco, yeah. But this part of the world, I think it's not easy for them to come just simply like that. So we have a long tradition in Ash'ariyah. I said we have uninterrupted tradition of this the rational thinking of religion, of faith with verification, faith with tahqiq, starting from Abu Hanifah, Maturidi, Ash'ari, up to Jurjani. Yeah? In this part of the world, basically, we are indebted to Imam Sanusi with Barahin. The most logical, analytical work on theology is done by Imam Sanusi. Yeah? But these people, the Salafi, they are very small, they are very little reference. Most of the time they refer to these people, then to Muhammad Wahab, then they back project to Ibn Taymiyyah, and then back project to Imam Ahmad. So this the kind of how they make their existence legitimate. I think they retroject their legitimacy to the past. But if we look properly, it's a very recent phenomena. That's why I think we need to pin down to this 20th century phenomena of Salafism. And I think we need to differentiate between this because the Ash'ari is different from the Salafi. And Ash'ari, they are main enemy actually. Yeah? They make us main enemy because we do ta'wil. They didn't do ta'wil. They didn't do interpretation. Yeah? So that basically I think my note on this issue, and I think our problem now, the problem of the Muslim world, because we left this. The Salafism thing, we just go back direct to the original Salaf. So we miss this 1000 as Dark Ages. They are the one who also promoted the Dark Ages of the Islamic tradition, yeah? From this 8th, 10th century up to the 17th century. Yeah? So that basically, and I think what we should retitle the word is what is wrong with the Islamic studies now. It's not about Islam. Yeah? That's basically my point. So I thank you again, Dr. Farouk, for inviting me in this forum.